like clock. I can't stop. Fuck around, make my 40 pop.
Boruto episode 168 review. Alright guys, this episode was definitely decent. I didn't really have any huge problems with it, but one thing I do want to point out before I start the review is the fact that this right now is a very important time of the Boruto anime. And I'm not talking about the overall Boruto anime, I'm talking about specifically in between big arcs. I think the actual hardcore arcs are decent arcs, but it's the times in between these actual hardcore arcs. And I think one of the biggest examples of this is after the tuning exam, we got like 3 or 4 episodes of Chocho becoming skinny because she wanted a boyfriend or something like that. Things like that just does not necessarily add up. So in this particular time, when we do come off of like a core arc where Boruto and everybody else just finished the mission, we have to continue on with that serious nature of the Boruto anime. We can't necessarily go back into some sort of filler arc or something like that. I think this right here is definitely a very good step towards that actually becoming a very good thing. Now in this episode, what we got to see is of course Boruto inside of training, but also Konohamaru and Mugino going back into the land hidden in the valley and basically confronting Victor about his plan. But I do want to talk about Boruto side of the training first. Now this right here is probably gonna be like the only negative thing I have to say about this episode, but it really seems like they're training to fight Deepa. Now don't get me wrong, I think that if Boruto and Sarada come back, and especially Mitsukis comes back and they actually beat Deepa, I think that would definitely be a very good story. I think that Deepa is definitely like an upper echelon character that should be dealt with by a character like Sasuke. From what we're seeing from the previews and the spoilers, we're probably gonna get to see a lot more Deepa in the upcoming future. I'll get into that in another video, but regardless, I just think that Deepa is like an upper echelon character that shouldn't necessarily be dealt with by Gettings. But regardless, other than that, it was a very good episode. I think Boruto definitely learned a lot from Kakashi. The rasengan training with Boruto and Kakashi, that right there was super cool. And not only that, it basically showed us that Boruto's rasengan isn't necessarily up there or up to par with Naruto or Kakashi's rasengan, even though we kind of knew that he wasn't necessarily on the same level as Naruto's rasengan. But regardless, Kakashi's rasengan, I think that right there might have possibly been a surprise to a lot of people out there. But regardless, we understand that Boruto definitely does have a lot of room to grow. Now, not only that, it's also extremely surprising that he didn't necessarily try to learn the lightning style rasengan. Everybody and their mother was kind of convinced that it was going to be a lightning style rasengan. I mean, even I was saying that it was obviously going to be the lightning style rasengan, mainly because he was going to Kakashi, and one of Kakashi's main abilities is of course lightning style, but it turns out to actually be wind style. And turns out that Kakashi didn't necessarily even try to teach Boruto a lot of stuff, even though, let's be honest, Kakashi did put in a lot of work with Boruto in telling him exactly what to do and helping him along. It was much more Boruto centric, and Boruto actually finding his way, and Boruto figuring out that he's not quote unquote alone. Now, as far as how it's actually going to affect the character like Deepa, I spoke about this when we actually seen Deepa fight against Team 7. One of the things that Konohamaru tried to do off the rip is hit Deepa with a fire style jutsu, and I said that that was extremely smart, man, because the main way to break down carbon bonds is by burning it. Deepa's hardening ability is just compressing a bunch of carbon bonds to basically make penetration damn near impossible. Big pause. But regardless, and in case with the wind style rasengan right now, I'm not really sure how that's going to necessarily translate to actually beating a character like Deepa. And of course, as I said, I'm not really too hyped about seeing a Boruto versus Deepa fight, so that could potentially be a very good thing for me. But regardless, in terms of if they're actually preparing to fight a character like Deepa, that right there doesn't really necessarily make any sense. But I do want to point out that's not really the only thing that gets through to Deepa. It seems like a large amount of force also affects Deepa, which is definitely a reason why Naruto would probably be a very good matchup for Deepa, mainly because Naruto just hits that hard. If you guys do recall, when Mitsuki actually entered Sage mode, Deepa tried to eat one of Mitsuki's attacks. Like at first he stood still, like he was right there. Mitsuki wasn't necessarily affecting him at all, but afterwards, once Mitsuki put a little bit more force behind it, then Deepa was actually moved off of his spot. So regardless, what we understand from that situation is the fact that it's not necessarily a situation where you have to actually break the carbon bonds of Deepa to actually do some damage to him. So of course, this wind style rasengan could possibly manufacture enough force to actually affect Deepa. Now in terms of Sarada's training, I feel like Sasuke kind of put the rumors of Sarada learning the Chidori to rest for right now. I think in the future she'll definitely learn how to use the Chidori, but regardless, as of right now, she probably won't necessarily be able to use it. But of course, her training was just predicated about her actually dodging things and making sure that she could actually master the one Tomo Sharingan. I think that was definitely a very good thing. Sasuke also gave a very good explanation upon why training can't necessarily give her the second Tomo. She actually has to go through some sort of trauma to actually unlock the second and third Tomo, and it just makes it interesting to figure out exactly how she's going to actually get that, what type of trauma she actually going to go through, what type of things is she actually going to see to make her actually get the other Tomos. Now a lot of people might actually assume that Chocho Boruto might die, or one of her best friends might die, something like that, or maybe even Sakura might get into some real big trouble. But regardless, whatever it is, I'm pretty sure we'd all love to see it. And of course, one of the biggest things that I do have to point out, the progression of Sada's tomos is not actually in the manga. So Sada's progressions of her second and third tomos is most likely going to be in an anime only arc. One of the things that I definitely thought to myself is the fact that Sarada and Sasuke are spending a lot more time together. If you guys do recall, before the Chunin exam, Sasuke was almost never in the Hidden Leaf Village. So for now, for them to just be chilling in the Hidden Leaf Village and training together, that was just a very good sight to see. And we all knew that would definitely be a very emotional sight for a lot of the Sarada and Sakura fans out there, especially some of the Sasuke fans out there. Some of the Sasuke fans are just all about business. They don't really care about this. But regardless, it's just a very nice sight to see. But of course, one of the most important things about this episode is the fact that Mugino and Konohamaru actually made some sort of moves into the land hidden in the valley. And at first, I was extremely confused. Mugino and Konohamaru, they was basically in a full-on fight with this character Victor. And all of a sudden, they're just chopping it up at a table, drinking tea together, basically having a slumber party. But after a while, they actually got down to business and they started talking about the Hashirama cell. Now, from what we've seen right then and there, it seemed like everybody in that table was actually fake. Victor is basically talking about the Hidden Leaf Village like he actually wanted a relationship with the Hidden Leaf Village. But let's be honest, he really doesn't care about the Hidden Leaf Village. The only thing that he possibly cares about the Hidden Leaf Village, technological advancements and what he could potentially take to advance his own research. But from what we've seen at first, the nice diplomatic approach from Mugino and Konohamaru didn't really do that much good, mainly because they basically got no answers. Now afterwards, they basically faked walking to the border and then they snuck back into the land hidden in the valley. I think this right here, right now, is where things actually get real. Now, do I think that they're going to eventually find the Hashirama cell? I think that's a very small chance, but I definitely do anticipate Konohamaru and Mugino fighting against Victor again. And I talked about this in my last review. Deepa not actually being in the laboratory right now, or the quote-unquote hospital that Victor has, that pretty much gives Konohamaru and Mugino an actual fighting chance against a character like Victor if worse comes to worse and they actually do get caught by Victor. Now, I do want to point out, I think that Victor himself is definitely able to solo Konohamaru and Mugino, but regardless, it could definitely be a situation where Konohamaru and Mugino get a strategic advantage over a character like Victor. But regardless, this time right here, and like in between arcs, is a very important time element because this is time where the Boruto anime has previously flopped before. And I think that they're handling this in a very good way. They're keeping the tension, they're keeping the importance with the Genin's training, they're keeping the Kata organization top of mind. But one thing that I do want to point out, we didn't really get to see anything about Mitsuki in this episode, and I definitely do expect to see at least something about Mitsuki in the next episode. As I said, I doubt that Mitsuki is probably going to stay the same while Boruto and Sarada are just getting better. I think that they're definitely going to give Mitsuki some sort of upgrade. Maybe Mitsuki actually does train, or maybe Orochimaru does put in some technological advancements in Mitsuki's synthetic body, something like that. But I definitely do not expect Mitsuki to actually stay the same throughout this whole ordeal. But let me know what you guys think about this episode in the comment section below. It's me, your boy Baara B, and we out.
It's a knife.